This is lesson 6-7, part 2. In this lesson, we will learn what happens when you make a composition of a function and its inverse. So here we have a function, and the first thing we'll do is find its inverse by switching x and y. And then we'll solve for y, so we'll subtract 1 on each side, divide by 2 on each side, and we find out that the inverse function is x minus 1 over 2. Now we're going to plug 2 into our original function. So f of 2 is 2 times 2 plus 1. That gives us 5. And then this says plug the answer to f of 2 into our inverse function. So we're plugging 5 into the inverse function. So 5 minus 1 over 2 is 4 over 2, which is 2. So that's interesting. We got 2 here, and that's what we started with. As it turns out, that's not unusual. If you have a function called f and its inverse called f to the negative 1, and these two things are actually inverse functions, then whenever you plug a value into the composition, you will get the exact same value back out. And if you do it in the opposite order, so you plug the value into the inverse function first, and then plug that answer into the original function, you still get your original value back out. This will be true for all x values in the domains of both the function and its inverse. So here's another example. Let's first find the inverse function. So we'll switch x with y. And we're going to solve for y. This is a little bit tricky. We're going to multiply by the denominator. So that cancels our denominator. Then we're going to divide by x here. And dividing by x here, that gives us y minus 1 equals 1 over x. Then we'll add 1 to both sides. And we find that our inverse function is 1 over x plus 1. Now we're going to find the composition where we plug 1 into the inverse function first. So plugging 1 into the inverse function, we get 1 over 1 plus 1, which is 1 plus 1, which equals 2. Then we're going to take that 2 and plug it into the original function. So we have 1 over 2 minus 1. 2 minus 1 is 1. And 1 over 1 is 1. So we got 1 here, which was what we started with. So far, so good. So now let's go the other way with it. We'll start by plugging 1 into the original function. So we get 1 over 1 minus 1. So that's 1 over 0. And this is an undefined operation. You're not allowed to divide by 0. So that means that this composition doesn't work. The reason it doesn't work is because the domain on our original function is all real numbers, except x cannot equal 1. Because if x is 1, we have 1 minus 1 is 0, and you're not allowed to divide by 0. In our inverse function, the domain is all real numbers, except x cannot equal 0, because if x were 0, we'd be dividing by 0. So these two functions are inverses of each other everywhere except for at 1 and 0.